Here's God putting it on our plate, doing, so to speak, everything to make it happen, and we just let it all fall apart. This talk of the Lubavitcher Rebbe from 1982. It's eerie, the parallelism between what was going on in Lebanon in 1982 and what was going on in Gaza right now in 2024. It feels like every single word the Rebbe said then, 1982, that was a long time ago, 40 years ago. It feels it could have been said this morning. That fresh, that current, that relevant. And as we're studying these words and discussing these words and trying to apply to our own life these words, the goal is really that we're creating a spiritual energy of resistance, of strength, of power. And our spiritual energy should change the course, should make things happen exactly in consonance with how the Rebbe is describing. So what we were discussing was, the last point we were saying was, God makes a lot of miracles. We're talking here in 1982 in Lebanon. We, of course, see it in Gaza today, and we've seen it in every single war Israel has ever had. Every single war. All right, they said they can't teach the Israeli wars in West Point. They're miracles. West Point can't teach miracles. So there's so many miracles. And the Rebbe goes on to say, beyond the military miracles, there are also political miracles. But when you look at those military miracles, they're military miracles the soldiers were aware of, like they would come and people would run away instead of fighting. They accomplished in half a day what they thought was going to take 2 days. And there were some military miracles the common soldiers weren't aware of, some military miracles we weren't privy to until much later. And that's, of course, exactly what's happening now in Gaza. There's miracles every day coming out of Gaza. If you're in that mode, if you're connected to the people that are sharing them, there's miracles coming out every day. And there are also the miracles we're not privy to because, as we were discussing last week, they're confidential. And then there are, I think, the quiet miracles we don't even realize. I was thinking this like yesterday, that I keep getting reports of how many missiles are being shot. I don't know if anyone saw today, the enormous number of missiles that were shot at Israel. So thank God many of them, the Iron Dome, stops, but not all. And somehow each missile manages to land in empty area, empty building that normally has people but doesn't, or maybe some minor, effects on the people, nothing serious. I keep getting report after report after report like that, and I'm like, if I just look at one, it's like, okay, another one, okay, another one, okay, but like, wait, let me put these all together. How is this possible? I was actually having a discussion today with my son, who's 18 years old, and he's like, Ma, how is this possible? How is this possible? I showed him the map of all the missiles that were shot today at Israel. He said, how is it possible that nobody got hurt with all those missiles? Are they, what do you mean bad at aiming? They hit the cities. I mean, what do you mean aiming? They know where a person is. They're going to very populated, densely populated areas. What's going on? It's a miracle. It's a miracle. That's what's going on. And when the missile does get through and isn't stopped by the Iron Dome and doesn't reverse back into Gaza itself, and it does fall in these very densely populated areas of Rishon LeZion, of Tel Aviv, of Rehovot, these major cities, and somehow each one lands in a place where no one really gets hurt. Definitely damage to property, but nobody really gets hurt. Just, again, you look at one, you look away, look away, you put it all together. What a loud, overwhelmingly loud expression of God's love for us. There's all those types of miracles. And then there's also the political miracles, the things that are happening in the world of politics that are also not normative for how it should be, how we know the world. And the Rebbe here is discussing what happened in 1982 in that fashion, those miracles. So the Rebbe said were equally or maybe more important than the military one. And I think we can all contribute now. I was thinking, and again, what do we know? We're little people. How much are we savvy in what's really going on? What I see, right or wrong, President's overall support of Israel, Biden's a Democrat. Many of his voters, especially the young ones, are completely against what he's doing, but he's still doing it, basically. I think that's pretty miraculous. The Democrats and Republicans, even though we're a country so split on party lines, but from both parties, they're trying to shut down anti-Semitism. I consider that pretty miraculous. It happened in the universities that 2 presidents resigned over that whole horrific, unbelievable fiasco there. Unbelievable. Like, I watched it a few times. I couldn't even fathom the words I was hearing. But at the end of it was that 2 of them did resign. I thought that was pretty miraculous. CNN supporting Israel. I mean, that's unbelievable. That's not even like unbelievable. I'm sure there's much more. I'm just small and I'm human and I don't know too much about this anyway. But from what my little brain is computing, I see a lot of political miracles, miracles that are influencing public opinion, miracles of how the pressures are being shifted in various ways. The Rebbe is pointing out in 1982, as I believe we mentioned last week, how the president of the United States, Reagan, went on a 10-day holiday, a 10-day vacation, so to speak, in communication. So do what you want. I don't really know what's going on. The Rebbe said in those 10 days, you could have conquered Beirut. You'd have done everything you need to do before he came back from his vacation. And Reagan could have been innocent. He was on vacation. What does he know? The prime minister of Israel, Begin, came to America during the war. Same idea. Do what you want. I mean, I don't really know what's going on. I'm innocent. I'm an American. How am I supposed to know what's going on in Lebanon? And additionally, the Rebbe said that when Begin came, until that time, the government, the Senate, the House of Representatives were very, very against what Israel was doing in Lebanon, were very antagonistic to Israel. And suddenly they all turned around. They became supportive. They gave tremendous aid. They voted in very quickly. Tremendous miracles, the Rebbe said. And also an additional miracle was during this war, and again, this doesn't happen too often, they changed Secretary of States in the White House. You don't usually change your Secretary of State, for sure not in the middle of a major war going on. And they changed it from Haig to Schultz. That was an unbelievable opportunity, the Rebbe said. That was an opportunity created by God. Because this new Secretary of State, Schultz, could say, hey, I was a newbie. I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing. I didn't know I was supposed to get involved. I didn't know I was supposed to regulate the situation. I didn't know I was supposed to stick America's nose in there. So Reagan's gone. Begin is gone. The legislative houses are favoring Israel. There's a new Secretary of State who's ignoring us. What more do you want God to do? Look what God did, all to create a situation that Israel could just go in there, take over Beirut, wipe out the PLO, seize control, put a strong peacekeeping army in place. All of this within these days, the Rebbe said it could have all happened. And what happened? Nothing. Nothing. Israel didn't take advantage of any of this. They didn't take advantage of Reagan's vacation. They didn't take advantage of Begin's being in America. They didn't take advantage of the legislatures of America favoring us. They didn't take advantage of a new Secretary of State. They didn't do anything. They stood outside the walls of Beirut and did nothing. With all of the unbelievable miracles that God made for them to do this, they did nothing. They didn't finish the job. They didn't conquer Beirut. They didn't destroy the PLO. They didn't maintain their military presence in Lebanon. And that's why now we still have the PLO. We have 120,000 Hezbollah in Lebanon. I don't know. I think about these words. It's actually very painful for me. And I have even more painful things to share. It's truly painful for me. Here is God putting it on our plate, doing, so to speak, everything to make it happen. And we just let it all fall apart. And let the PLO run away and allow the terror organizations to thrive and flourish so they're far greater today than they were in 1982. And when I'm looking at these words of the Rebbe, I'm like, okay, the Rebbe said them. They have a power. They have a spiritual power. It didn't happen then. Maybe they're for now. Maybe now it's happening because, again, we have the same situation. We have so many military miracles. We have, as I enumerated what my little eyes can see, anyone want to chime in? Any other things they've noticed, what they could call the political miracles? But we should take advantage. And I know there's a lot of pressure on Israel now. There's ceasefire, stop fighting, all of these things that would be such tragedy is not the right word for them. With such travesties. Well, as I said, the Rebbe's words that we're learning, that we're talking about, that we're vivifying with our energy they should do the job. So what happened then? Why didn't they take advantage? Why did they ignore? Yes, I was going to add something. I hear maybe it was just someone came on and wasn't muted. Okay. Oh, well, I thought someone had something else to add in terms of the miracles she noticed in the political arena. What was going on in Israel in 1982? So the Rebbe said their political concerns overwhelmed the security issues. The army wasn't vacillating. And you don't have to be a great expert of military strategy to understand that if you let the PLO leave, they're still going to be there to harm you. And if you don't conquer Beirut and you don't have a military presence in Lebanon, they're still going to be giving you the same problems they were giving you before you invaded. We could have probably told Begin that as well. So why did they listen? It's so obvious, so simple. Because there were political concerns. What were the political concerns? Fear from the world, fear from the nations, fear from the pressures. All the things the Rebbe enumerated. Reagan goes on vacation, Begin leaves, new Secretary of State. I mean, the Israeli government knew this the same way the Rebbe knows it. And it's obvious that all these things were being done to remove the pressure, to create a situation where they could do what they needed to do. So like they're scared of a pressure, but there isn't any real pressure. At that time, as now, as has happened from 1982 until now, there's a lot of Arab infighting. They had other problems, so to speak, on their head besides the state of Israel. It's almost like we're scared of something that doesn't exist. Israel was so scared, so to speak, of what the world would say that they were doing more than the world was demanding of them. There said something very interesting. He said, why are they so scared? Why are they so scared of all the nations around them, of all the non-Jews around them, of all the pressures from the world that they're imagining? Because of what's going on inside their own hearts. Because of the evil within, the non-Jew, the Gentile, so to speak, within their hearts, within themselves, their own evil inclination, their own animal soul, that has such power over them. Imagine such an exile that you're scared of your own inner animal, your own inner evil. And the Rebbe said the more honorable, more powerful, more prestigious, the person, more deeply is ingrained his personal exile, the fears created by his own inner reality. I felt these words had a lot of personal application. The Rebbe is saying when you're intimidated from what's going on inside of you, from your own fears, from your own stresses, from your own traumas, and you're intimidated by the world around you. Have you seen this in your life in either direction? That you have your own inner fears, which then makes you vulnerable to the voices in the world around you, or conversely, that when you conquer your own inner world, what the world around you is saying doesn't bother you anymore. Anyone have seen this in their life? I thought it was really a very, very, very strong message, because I really felt that it's so true. It's so often we're intimidated. We're intimidated maybe by people's opinions of us, maybe by what people say, what we do get invited to, what we don't get invited to, what's happening in our world. And it's like, why do we let these things get to us? Why do we let other people's opinions change from what we should do if we know what we're doing is right? It's almost like because we have inside of ourselves an inner weakness, that's why what our world, obviously the pressures on us are not like the pressures on the Prime Minister of Israel, but what the pressures on our world, they get to us because of our own inner weakness. And if we didn't have that inner weakness, if inside ourselves we were strong and confident and clear in our strength, in our vision, in our truth, if we were really clear and strong in our own truth, then what the people in our world would be saying would be irrelevant. So what? So what, how they're viewing me or what they're thinking about me, or it just wouldn't make a difference. We wouldn't be affected by it because we know what we're doing. We know why we're doing it. We know it's right and move on. Doesn't make a difference. But what's inside of ourselves, it's not so strong. Then those voices from people, or the voices we think what those people are saying, if they're saying it or not, is very impactful. Makes a big impression on sometimes on the choices we make, or even if it's not changing the choices we make, it might change how we feel about the choices we make. We might still make the same choice. Like I said, we don't have the same pressures on us like the Prime Minister of Israel. So we might still do what we know is right, but we might not feel very good about our choices because of all the pressures we are experiencing, or we are imagining that we are experiencing. That's basically what the Rebbe is saying. And I do think it's a message that we probably at some point have dealt with in our life. So the Rebbe said, going back to 1982 and Israel, that this is not the first time Israel has made this mistake. The mistake meaning to put politics before security, not to listen to the army, to listen to politicians. The Rebbe says this has been happening again and again and again and again in Israel. Right, they started talking in 1982. Well, before that, go back 4 years, was 1978. I don't know if you guys were in America in 1978, but in 1978 was the Camp David Accords. That was a huge, huge, huge thing that happened that we're going to be discussing in 1978. Same again, politics before security. Before that was the Yom Kippur War. That was in 1973. Again, politics before security. Before that was the Six-Day War in 1967. Again, politics before security. And before that was the Sinai War in 1956. And again, politics before security. In every situation, in 56 and in 67 and in 73 and in 78, in every situation, in the end, unfortunately, tragically, Israel was guided by politicians. Even though in each situation, the army said, these decisions will lead to more casualties. And they didn't listen. And in every situation, that's exactly what happened. In every single situation. It's so strange because you're like, how many times does the same thing have to happen before you learn? Like, we keep repeating the same mistake. When are we going to realize? Very strongly by the Yom Kippur War. And before the Yom Kippur War, the army, I'm using the word army loosely, whatever the army means, the intelligence, the generals, doesn't mean the foot soldiers, but the army was advising, we need to draft the soldiers. We need to draft the reserves. We all know they're going to attack us. We need to call up the army. We need to be in a state of military readiness. And the government refused. So Golda Meir, who was the prime minister then, she's dancing around the world trying to create peace. She's going to the Pope. She's going to him. She's going here. She's going all over. In the meanwhile, it's like, we know this is happening. We know they're about to attack us. Did they know it was going to be on Yom Kippur? No. Did they know they were going to get attacked? Yes. That whole summer, the Rebbe was warning and warning and warning. They knew what was going on. And they were like, no. Like again, political considerations. We want to be the innocent one. We want to be the victims. We want to say, hey, world, we're innocent. Look, they brutally attacked us. So for that, hundreds of people have to die? And that's exactly what happened. And yes, we're the innocent victims. The world couldn't care less. Nobody, threw a party for us or did anything to help us because we were massacred on Yom Kippur, on our holiest day. And this could have all been prevented. They knew. They could have preempted the whole thing. They did nothing because of political considerations. So after this whole horrific tragedy, Golda Meir, the prime minister, she admitted this. She wrote, it was published, everything I just said. Nothing's a state secret. I don't have any confidential information here. She literally is writing this. She is literally saying, we were wrong. If we had listened to the military advice, we would have called up the army. We would have saved hundreds of lives. We didn't. And many, 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 many people died as a result. When was that? That was 1973. She publicly admitted, she publicly confessed, she publicly said they were wrong. So you wouldn't think would happen again 5 years later. This is in 1973. Fast forward 5 years, it's 1978. And we have the Camp David Accords. Same stupidity, same horrific mistakes. What did Israel do by Camp David? They took large stretches of land, vital stretches of land that are so important to security, that would have been this buffer zone between them and the enemy of Egypt. That's not our friend, no. And they gave it away. So here we are in 82, and Israel is saying they have to go to war with Lebanon because they need a buffer zone. And they tried before, if you remember, I told you the history, to push back the Arabs, to bring in the Lebanese Christians, to make like a human buffer zone between them and the terrorists, between them and the ability to shoot missiles at us, to kill us. Israel's going to war with Lebanon because of the PLO presence, because we need a buffer zone, because we're a victim of all their missiles and rockets. And now Israel has the exact same situation in Egypt. And they have this huge amount of land that they won with a lot of lives. And they voluntarily give it away. What else did they do by Camp David that was equally horrific? They gave away the oil wells. Here we have oil, which is probably the most significant warfare equipment nowadays for wartime and for peacetime industry, oil. Here we have these oil wells, and Israel gives them to Egypt. And the Rebbe says Israel didn't even own these oil wells, meaning it was on the land that Israel owned. But foreigners, not Israelis, foreigners had invested millions of dollars to create these oil wells, so they weren't Israel's. And Israel, as if they're owners of them, which they weren't, gives them to Egypt. And after the Camp David Accords, Israel had to pay hundreds of millions of dollars to these foreigners for the oil wells that they gave to Egypt. And that's besides, according, again, these aren't state secrets. According to the official documents, Israel is saying the Camp David Accords cost Israel $17 billion. Israel's taking the land we need for security, giving it away, taking the oil wells that'll be so vital, and they don't own them anyway, giving them away, spending $17 billion on this. Much more important, of course, than the money is the security. And is thinking of the soldiers who spilled their blood to get that Sinai land, who died believing that this was going to help the security of all the Jews in Israel. So every one of those people that died, it was like for nothing. They died for nothing. They died to conquer land that we gave to Egypt. And the Rebbe says, and again, when I was learning this the first time, when I was preparing it, when I was thinking about it, it's literally painful for me to think these ideas. It's literally painful for me to share them. But we're doing this because we want to create the spiritual energy that this will not happen now. So the Rebbe says it was all for nothing, because they didn't have to give any oil wells. They didn't have to give any land. They could have given like a token, 10 feet somewhere, like right on the Egyptian border. Everybody involved wanted those peace treaty for their own personal agendas, which is usually what fuels politics everywhere in the world. Meaning, president of Egypt was Sadat, Anwar Sadat. At that time, Sadat's reign was very, very shaky all over the Arab world and since. It's like the most normal, casual thing to assassinate the leader, to make a little civil revolution, to seize the government. So Sadat felt his own government was very shaky. There was no money in Egypt then. There was no order in Egypt then. To protect his own interests, to make the world believe, and much more importantly for him, to make his people believe he's a powerful leader, he's a strong leader, he's making significant change. He needed this peace treaty. He needed to show, hey, look, guys, I'm the real man. You want me, don't get rid of me. I've got the power. Whatever Israel would have said, he would have agreed to it, as we see very strongly that Egypt made this very ludicrous condition with Israel for the Camp David Accords. And Egypt said, you have to give away, you have to give to the Arabs the old city of Jerusalem. And Israel said, nothing doing. No, that's not negotiable. Thank God, at least they said that. And he backed down. Okay, nothing doing. Let's move on. Meaning he wanted those, he wanted to get the Nobel Prize, so to speak. He wanted that, classical handshake on the White House lawn. He wanted to be the hero. He doesn't mind getting the oil wells on the land also, but if we wouldn't have given them, he would have done it anyway. And the Rebbe said the same thing was happening in America. Who was the president of America then? Jimmy Carter. I don't know, again, if you remember 1978 in America, but Carter was a complete, what we call in American politics, black horse. Completely unexpected for him to win. He's this peanut farmer. I mean, that sounds like he was like on the poor side, a very, 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 probably multi-billionaire peanut farmer. Meaning, some peanut plantations in Georgia. There'd been no presidents from the deep South since like before the Civil War. Nobody expected him to win. And somehow he squeaked by and won. Now he's going to be up for re-elections. So he also had the same thoughts that had. If I can do this, if I can make this, wow, the whole world's going to talk about it, that I created this peace between these enemies for years, Egypt and Israel, wow, my glory, wow, my fame, wow, for sure I'll be reelected. Practically speaking, the peace treaty happened and he completely lost the election. Reagan won by a landslide. But okay, but that he didn't know that. He didn't see that in his crystal ball. So Egypt, Sadat needed the peace treaty if we gave or didn't give anything. He needed it for his own political gain. Carter also needed the peace treaty, whatever Israel would give or wouldn't give. Carter, for his own political fantasies, for his own political vision, for his own thoughts on his own political future, also needed the peace treaty. So there was no pressure on Israel. Again, just like before, and just like in Lebanon, and just like now in Gaza. As the Rebbe is saying, the pressure comes from within, from our own inner fears. Egypt wanted it no matter what. Carter, America would have gone for it no matter what. And Israel gave away these vast stretches of land, gave away these oil wells, made all of the soldiers that died for these lands, made their lives for naught. This is just, again, Israel not learning their lesson, not understanding that if you're firm, we could get the peace treaty without these horrific security and financial costs. I was actually thinking, it's sort of, again, interesting. The Rebbe doesn't go into this, what I'm about to say now, but the irony is, again, I don't know how much you know of Israeli politics, but the two major political parties, like in America, we have the Republicans and the Democrats. So, of course, Israel's a different system because it's a parliamentary system, which is a little hard for Americans to fathom, but whatever, we're not going to go there. The two major political parties are called, in English, we'll call them Labor and Likud. And Labor is much more left-wing, much more politically in favor of giving away land and anything for peace, that whole perspective. And Likud is much more what we could call loosely conservative, much more officially. But every single time there's been a major concession to the Arabs from the beginning of Israel's history until today, the prime minister has always been from Likud. Always, every single one. Giving away Gaza, a Likud prime minister. Camp David Accords, Begin, probably the most hawkish prime minister Israel has ever had. It just shows that there's so much pressure when you're in that position, and people can crumble to pressure, and people can go completely against their own personal philosophies and visions of truth under pressure. Because according to Likud philosophy, we don't do this. But every time it was done by a leader from Likud. Because there's so much pressure. And again, I feel there's tremendous personal application in our own lives that we also, can look at the world and can feel pressure from people, from their opinions, from what they say, from what they do, from how they treat us. And we could also sometimes go against what we think is right or know is right or feel is right because of the pressures, because of what we're under. And it's again, not that we're under what they're under, and not that we're doing what they're doing, but I feel it's a very practical, obvious application. Is to look into our own lives and to ask ourselves that question. And as we're doing so, and as we're strengthening our own convictions of right and wrong, and doing not what's popular or what's socially acceptable or what's going to get you admired, but what's true, I think that spiritually gives tremendous strength to this whole issue. I think spiritually, as we strengthen ourselves to do the right, not the politically, popularly, socially favored choice, I think that gives strength to the Israeli government to do the right also.